I need to bang out some sales tomorrow, baby. Chasing that dream. High on caffeine. I'm ready, brother. Cue it up.
I was going to do a little story where I was going to use John Carpenter's The Fog
Mm-hmm.
as my kind of framing
Sure.
for a story that I'm just going to tell you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it'll end up as a little cut piece. Have you ever heard of a CIA and U.S. Army co-op called Operation Sea Spray?
Sea spray. I have not. I don't think so. Sea spray.
This was a joint operation where CIA and the United States Army were very concerned. They thought for sure that the Soviet Union had or possibly even China had the capability of launching a biological weapon attack on the United States, a thing that they were not really trying to do. But that's okay. That's okay.
Right.
They ran some simulations and they were like, oh, okay, this is great. But like, if we want to know how a biological attack would really happen in an American city,
They did it on their residents.
we need to do it and see how things would spread. Are you reading it? You're looking at it now?
Yeah, I'm just reading it now.
So they were like, we're going to do this with mist and it's going to be slightly colored. So we need fog to camouflage it. So like, so where do we know we'll have fog? San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so they unleashed this bacteria on San Francisco, and it was remarkably effective. The bacteria spread not to the entire Bay Area, not just San Francisco, but to the whole Bay Area. And now, they thought that this bacterial infection was going to be benign. It was, mild enough it wouldn't have any effect. But of course, a bunch of people got like really bad urinary tract infections. A bunch of people had other things go wrong, and one person died. After they were, biologically attacked by their own government. So I thought it would be fun to kind of do Operation Sea Spray within like framing it within the, like the movie The Fog.
I like that. I like it.
Yeah. So that's my good idea that didn't come to pass.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, are you ready to rock and roll?
Let's do it, baby.
All right. Spooky theme music plays.
Cue the music.
Welcome to an Unbalanced Views of History spooky season special.
You like that?
Normally, this is a mostly American history podcast where we take a deep dive into interesting but little known stories over the course of 4 episodes or so. But today we are going to do something a little different. Larry XL, our special guest for the Smallpox in the American Revolution series we've been working on, is unavailable this week. He's probably being attacked by ghouls. So, Unbalanced listener, you are stuck once again with your regular old co-hosts. This week, we will look at a couple of what I'm calling little quick hitters, short stories that hopefully fit the mood of spooky season, or at least a little bit, just for a bit of fun. I haven't written any scripts here, so this is going to be a much more freewheeling episode than normal, and hopefully it works and you like it.
And if not, I was going to say, if not, then tough tits.
That's right. If not, try the other ones. They might be more to your liking.
Change the channel.
If this is your first episode, welcome. I'm your host, lover of zombie tropes, want to believe in aliens, but not the proby kind, and guy who feels like he's wearing the sunglasses from They Live all the time. I'm Brian. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, lover of unobtainium, host to parasitic right-wing brainworms, and guy currently pointing Chekhov's gun at me. I hope that isn't relevant later. It's Mike. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you? Good to be on again. Good to be on.
I'm well. Put Chekhov's gun away.
Put away for now, but don't make me bring it out again. That's all I got to say.
You know what Chekhov's gun is, correct?
Correct. It's the classic AK-47, and
Indeed.
It's been used. It's very reliable. It will fire even when jammed with sand. So don't mess with me, all right? And it
I
makes a
think
distinguished sound according to Clint Eastwood in a couple different movies, all right?
I think we are thinking of different Chekhovs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you sent it to me in a text.
Yeah, but
Yes.
that doesn't mean you read it. Every once in a while,
I
I'll
read it.
send you a
I read
cluster, and
it,
I'm
but
like,
I
all
was
right,
like,
he
yeah,
read the
okay.
first one, maybe.
Well, there was a couple books that was crammed before that and then after that in a text version that I had to get through,
Mhm.
but I did finally get to
But you keep trying to defend Columbus. And I can't.
my boy Chrissy.
I just cannot. It's
That's
I'll let you defend certain people and just say, okay, sure, no, I disagree. I think he's a piece of garbage or whatever. But Columbus is one that is like his own contemporaries thought he was a monster. That's all I'm going to say. Like that's
I didn't disagree. I did not disagree
yeah.
with that. I didn't disagree with it. I just said that
We should celebrate the
he
bravery of
was
the
a
men who
very
actually sailed the ships to get here.
listen. You got to have balls to get on those types of boats and sail across the ocean. That's all I got to
Well,
say.
and
Very brave. Very
and let me
brave.
just say also, that's fine. I mean, the that's fine. But also he didn't do it alone.
No, of course
But
not.
we have lost the names of most of those men to history. Not that they were good people that are deserving of celebration either. But I
No.
will say at least the Pinzone brothers saved Columbus's bacon when he wrecked his ship because he navigated right into some shoals.
Hmm.
And then he was writing like, "Oh, woe is me! There's no way anybody's going to be able to get close enough to rescue us." And then Martin Pinzone sailed the Pinta right next to him so they could be saved, which was nice of him. But then the Pinzone brothers were just eventually like, "This guy's such a dick." They left. They left. They were like, "We're out of here. Like we're going to go our own way because can't stand it." And then when they sailed back, they you know they arrived in Spain and Columbus did not. Columbus arrived
Hmm.
in Portugal because he misnavigated his way back home and almost started a war because he's flying the Spanish flag and like rolls up rolls up with a cannonaded caravel into Portuguese under the Portuguese shore and they're like hey what are you doing like that's not okay. Um, and Pinzone got to Spain first, but whatever.
Are
He's
we
it
doing
is
an
what it is.
episode on Chrissy Columbus?
No, that's just
Right
me
then.
still mad. I'm still mad about it. So so Mike,
Don't get angry at the
nor
guy. He's been dead for a long time.
he didn't suffer enough. So Mike, normally we use this moment to say what's your sunshine this week, but
Oh.
I think given that it's spooky season, uh
Ooh.
what's your full moon shine this week?
Full moonshine. Let's see. So that I gotta say, I have been helping small business owners lately, one after the other,
Good God.
prepare for the recession, make sure they're profitable, make sure they have, quality people. And I've been picking up a couple more clients this week, and it's just a real pleasure to work with the salt of the earth people that are small business owners that
So when you
really,
say all that,
yes,
just curious, you mean you're trying to make sure that they are set up that they can continue to have employees that make a living wage who can, so that the working class folks that work for them will be taken care of during this recession, that they will make
correct.
sure that, if it means, they have to make sure that they're paying their people well enough to stick around and to survive and all that. That's what you're setting up.
That's absolutely correct.
Good. Cause that's what I care about.
Yep.
I don't care about the rest of
The
it.
backbone of our country, my friend, the small business owner.
I mean,
Gotta love
that's
them.
what we like. It's what we like to say, but it's
And
not
these
really
people
true.
are they're surprisingly well off, but for the most part, blue collar. They're not highly educated. They're smart, but they're just your average Joe, right? They're not. When you think business owner, you might think like some wealthy private jet flying person or something like that. Maybe not even first class.
No,
These guys, let me tell you, they care about their people. They do really good work. They're passionate, and for people that are, for the most part, high school graduates, you know, they're in the top 1%. Yeah, at the end of the day, they're making a few 100,000 a year minimum, and hopefully we can put more in their pocket to give back to the communities and keep growing and hiring. And the average client has 30 families that rely on them. For me, 30 families, which is
Okay.
amazing. So
Sure. I guess, yeah.
that's my moonshine.
Okay.
What are you howling at today? Besides
So,
Chrissy Columbus.
yeah. Yeah. Um, so this weekend, my daughter is competing in a taekwondo tournament. And so,
She's gonna kick
uh,
some ass, baby.
I'm telling you, I really, I ought to send you some of the videos. Like, anyway, she's going to this tournament, and so we've been pushing her a little harder than usual. Usually, taekwondo is fun. She has fun doing it.
Hmm.
But wanted to get in, few extra sessions this week. I don't know. I mean, you never know if you win a medal or anything like that. But if she is as aggressive from the beginning as she has been at practice all week,
Hmm.
it's hard for me to imagine any of these other kids being able to compete with her in sparring. That's for sure.
Are they doing sparring where they count the contact? They go, okay, one, you got a point, and then
Yep.
they go that
Yeah.
thing, and it's a tournament or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh
Absolutely.
wow,
And
that's awesome.
she went up against another little girl who is she has a green belt,
Hmm.
and she just did her midterm graduation, so she's like the second half of a green belt.
Hmm.
And the little girl she went against had a blue belt, which is I think blue is next after green, so she's a bit advanced,
Hmm.
and is also like 11.
Mm,
and
mm. That's the big difference right there.
and my daughter tore her up,
Really?
tore her up.
Wow. That's great. That's awesome.
She just was, it's like a flurry of punches and kicks. At the rate she's going, she'll be going for black belt by like March 2024 or so,
That's
something like that.
amazing. That is amazing.
Maybe a little bit later than that. It might be closer to her birthday. I can't remember the schedule exactly, but but yeah, by the time she's like 9, she'll be a black belt, which is insane. And
It's crazy,
she'll
man.
she'll be able to
It's
kick my butt.
crazy.
Anyway, yeah. So that's
Good
my sunshine.
stuff.
Is I'm excited to do this little tournament, to see, you know, to see her compete against some strangers, and
Yeah.
to be able to
Yeah.
compete only against kids that are her own age. You know what I mean? Instead of like, because it is kind of a mixed bag, and
Yeah.
a lot of times she's the only one that's like her age there. So that's my moonshine. Other than of course moonshine. I want to start this week. It's a little more free flow, and I'm going to
Hmm.
edit a lot of that intro out because there's just a lot of rambling. You can see what happens when I get off script. Um, so I want to start this week with a little story about a
Hmm.
word
Hmm.
or theme, a word and a theme that doesn't necessarily fit with the spooky theme perfectly, but I do want to briefly talk about it, kind of as an introduction. And it's a cool story. And it is a theme that we find pretty often used in like suspenseful movies and TV shows, horror movies. So, that's my tangible link, right? So an especially famous example of this particular trope can be found in a rather iconic suspense horror film where a
Hmm.
protagonist is sabotaged, that's our theme, sabotage, by a classic anti-hero, placing them both in grave danger of dismemberment and death. And of course, I am talking about the movie, classic body horror movie, Toy Story.
Oh yeah, one of my favorites. Little backstory. I watched the trilogy backwards. So I started with Toy Story 3, then went to 2, and then 1, and loved them all. This was right in the time that my daughter started. Obviously, that's the reason I watched them originally, and I
Three
just
is the
think they're
worst.
fantastic, except for the last. I
Four,
think one. It was
four
the
is
one that
better
really
than
hurt.
three.
But
I think four is much better than
was
three.
it 3? I think
Yeah.
I saw 4 at the movie theater with my daughter, and I thought it was decent. I just thought 3 and
I thought that
4.
the reason I liked four
I don't know. I
was that
liked
I
the
felt like
first
it
2.
got
I thought
back
they were just
to, I felt
magnificent.
like three kind of sits like an outlier in the series. It doesn't, there's nothing satisfying about it. There's no real closure. It's a kind of,
Hmm.
you're kind of left with a bit of ennui at the end of it. It's a bit melancholic, but it's not really, I don't know. I don't really feel like it does I don't feel like it does a thing,
Mm-hmm.
like in the same way that 1 and 2 do a thing, right? I mean, and again, I mean, not to get too much into what is ostensibly a kids movie, but like
Mm-hmm.
I'm joking when I say that movie deals with body horror and deals with, I mean, it deals with some pretty heavy themes, even if
Especially the
they're.
third one.
Well, talk about
The
the
third
first
one
one
in
deals
that
with.
store was spooky with the
Yeah, it's a little
dolls with the
spooky.
heads. Yeah, yeah, where he sneaks into the store and then he's part of the one creepy daughter or the creepy dolls pushing the like the basket or whatever it is. Oh man, and she has her little two sidekicks. Oh my god, that was scary.
The
Yeah,
fourth one is the one with like the vintage shop and
that
the
might be the
dolls in
fourth one
there.
then.
They're
That's
pretty
the fourth
creepy
one then. That's what
with
I'm
the
talking about.
ventriloquist dummy, the
Yes,
ventriloquist
yes,
dummies that
yes,
are, yeah, yeah.
yes, 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 yes. That's what
Um,
I'm talking about.
but the thing about one is it really does deal with this idea of body horror because you remember the
Mm-hmm.
villain in one is the next door neighbor kids or the neighbor kid Sid, who like
Oh, blowing up stuff where he blows
blowing
everything
up
up.
toys, but he also what he dismembers them and then puts them back together in
Yeah,
forms they were never meant to occupy.
sure.
And so I mean that is body horror. That is a just like any other body horror movie, except with toys as the as the victims. And anyway, so I kind of I think that there are some pretty heavy horror spooky themes in there. They're just dressed down for children, so it's a good way to integrate.
Sure, sure.
So the term and or sort of trope that we want to deal with, I want to tell you about is the idea of sabotage.
Ooh, just brings back it just brings back, memories of the Beastie Boys for me.
Absolutely. But as it turns out, Mike, the word existed before the song.
No.
The Beastie Boys did not invent the word
Huh.
or the theme. So okay, so don't look this up. I want to tell you
Okay.
about it. So the word itself,
Can I guess where it comes from? Can I guess where it comes from?
you can guess.
Sabotage?
Sure, guess.
I'm
Sure.
thinking it's French. It comes from a French-oriented word because they're always fucking complaining about getting their asses whooped. So they're probably like, "Oh, we've been sabotaged again. Sabotage! It's sabotage again. Our navy sunk again. We're getting beat up again. America saved us again. Sabotage, sabotage." Am I right?
No, but
Okay,
French.
damn
You're
it.
right about the French part. The rest of it, you're way off.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay, but I'm right. I guess
yes,
it's French.
So
Really
the most popular, although it's probably inaccurate, although again, like a lot of these things, you get these popular theories. There's probably truth buried in there somewhere. But the most popular, if
Sure,
inaccurate,
sure,
theory
sure.
is that wooden clogs, like the ones they wear in the
Uh-huh.
Netherlands, they're called klompen
Yeah.
in the Netherlands, but in French, the word for those wooden clogs is sabot. Okay, sabot.
Oh.
Um, Now, really quick, those wooden clogs. Do you know anything about those things? Like why people wear them?
Um, wooden clogs. Why? I swear I've read something about that, but I don't
Okay,
recall.
so the Netherlands, I find it to be an interesting country, at least in part because I don't know a lot of other countries where the name is so well. There are probably, but the name is so sort of weird. Nederland, Netherlands means Low Country. And so the
Uh-huh.
Netherlands is just like for years was just called like the Low Country. But anyway, so because
Mhm.
it's that's why they have dikes and a series of dikes and dams and everything else in order to hold the ocean back because it's below sea level.
And that's where the Neanderthals come from too.
No, they come from the Neander Valley.
In the Netherlands.
No, no,
Oh,
the
okay.
Neander Valley is like Germany, France,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken.
I'm one for one.
Anyway, so wooden clogs are called sabot or sabot in French. And the story goes that in the 15th century, so we're talking 1400s, peasant workers in France who were angry over working conditions as things were in the long, slow process of pre sort of industrialization, that as they grew angry over working conditions, they would throw their sabot into the machinery in order to slow it down or break it. And hence you got sabotage, right? Throwing your wooden shoe into the
Mhm.
machinery to like stop the gears. Now, this is probably not true. However, the whole thing with the wooden shoes, just to digress for 1 second, is that they're peasant shoes. They're easy to make. They're cheap to make. The wood is
Hmm.
abundant enough to make them pretty easily, as opposed to leather, and they also last a lot longer. They're good for that, but also for especially in places like low-lying areas like the Netherlands, you would find fishermen and farmers were the ones who sort of wore these because they'd walk around and it would prevent them from getting things
Hmm.
like fish hooks stuck in their feet or nails stuck in
Makes
their feet, things
sense.
that would go right through leather, but not go through the wooden shoes. Now, they have those curled up pointy toes because, of course, because they're wood as opposed to something flexible like leather, you can't rotate on the ball of your foot the way you can with a soft shoe. So they have to have that curled toe in order to allow you to sort of rotate on the ball of your foot by, because like when you're on the ball of your foot, the toe is way up in the air. So you can sort of pivot on that rounded toe.
You're talking about the shoes that the Iron Sheik used to wear.
No, those were like slippers, but they weren't wooden.
Well, I mean, the shape with the hook on the
But the
front.
shape, yeah, well, you've seen like wooden Dutch
Yes.
shoes. They do the same thing. They
Hmm.
sort of curl up at the front. Anyway, the story about the Sabat, the reason I think it's probably not true is that there really weren't any machines in 15th century France. There weren't any real machines in like not that kind of machine anywhere.
Hmm.
Like the story is that this was people who were working like knitting machines or looms, and like the first knitting machine wasn't invented until like 1597, or maybe 1497 rather. So at the very, very end of the 15th century. So it seems odd that that would be the story. But anyway, there's probably some truth to this, but also the fact that it's peasants throwing their shoes into a machine that would then break their shoes or leave them shoeless, seems problematic because poor people need their shoes and can't
Correct.
really afford to replace them. So again, there's probably some truth in all this. Like there's probably something, it's probably a thing that maybe happened, but not like en
Hmm.
masse, but it's a good story. So good a story, in fact, that anarchists in the 18th and 19th century who were trying to organize labor during the actual industrial revolution, they adopted the sabbat, the clog, as one of their symbols. So they would put up like, pamphlets and have signs and stuff made with just like a crude kind of that wooden clog drawn on it. And that basically was like, we're having an anarchist meeting at this place, or we're doing whatever. Anyway, however, Sabbat became a synonymous term just for the rural peasants in France as it did industrialize. So people would just call like poor peasants from the country Sabbat. Like that would be that's what they'd
Hmm.
say in the cities, right? So
Hmm.
when workers went on strike, because of course the industrialization process sucked, and like capitalists treat their labor like shit. They don't pay them. They put them in horrible conditions. Nothing's changed. And they would then, so like these people would try to like go on strike in order to, demand better working conditions or enough money to like buy food and stuff. And the capitalist sort of industrialists would bring in rural peasants. They would sort of, go and get them and bring them into the cities to work as essentially as strike breakers. Of course, they don't know they're strike breakers. They're just being dragged into work, right?
Hmm.
And these people were like untrained. They were unfamiliar with the machinery, untrained in the work, and they wore their wooden shoes, which on cobblestones are not very good. They're great in wet fields and around the seashore and all that, not so good on cobblestones. So they
Hmm.
clomp, clomp, clomp all around, which is probably why they're called klompen that the Dutch call them klompen. And the word clog sounds an awful lot like the sound they make if you hit wood on like a, cobblestone. Sounds a lot like what they would sound like. So saboteurs was a phrase that came to be known for like walking noisily, like you were saboteuring.
Yes.
However, because these saboteurs, these sabbats come in and are brought in to work these early factories and stuff, but they don't know how to use the machinery. They don't know how to do the stuff. The word saboteurs comes to have like a double entendre, not just walking around loudly, but it also comes to mean like shoddy work or to bungle
Hmm.
a job, right?
Hmm.
Because that's kind of what they were doing was shoddy work,
Hmm.
bungling a job. When the strikes eventually would end, the workers come back and the saboteurs are fired because they're not very good at the job. Workers eventually will adopt this tactic of doing shoddy work, bungling the job, saboteuring in order to, like, as a tactic for better conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So they start saboteuring in order to try and improve their wages and improve their conditions. So the word, which meant like started meaning shoddy work and then means, it sort of means walking around loudly. Then it means shoddy work because people walking around loud. Then the workers, the more skilled factory workers start adopting the tactic of doing that shoddy work, of saboteuring. And so the word starts to become synonymous with like shoddy work, but because it becomes a tactic, it starts to have a kind of different meaning, even though it has the same meaning, right? Here's the thing. Same root meaning behind the English word slipshod, which literally means wearing loose shoes or loose slippers. Like you shoe a horse, it's shod. Slipshod means slippers, shod, like so. And it's where we get the idea of shoddy work. Slipshod, shoddy, saboteurs. All of that is from the same kind of root, which I think is really interesting.
Very interesting.
Sabat comes from the same root as the Spanish zapato for shoe, the Turkish zabata for shoe, and the Italian ciabatta, which means slipper. But then they make a flatbread that originally sort of has a rounded shape and everything else and kind of looks like a slipper. So ciabatta bread comes from the same root of sabotage.
And you've also forgot that Italy came with Antonio Sabato Jr., who was a phenomenal actor.
But that a few years later.
Okay. Not quite the same era, but close. Okay.
That's Antonio Slipper to you. Antonio Slipper Jr. Little Anthony Slipper. The first time the word sabotage is used in English was 1910. And it came in the context of a British newspaper like complaining about French railway workers who were on strike in France. And it was basically used the word sabotage, which was a word they'd been using in France now for like a couple hundred years to mean, shoddy work or like intentionally bungling a job or whatever. But for the first time in English in 1910, as they were complaining about the French rail traffic. Now, French railway strikers sabotage rails as a tactic to try and improve their conditions. They would do things like throw switches to make trains go to a different direction. So then like especially with perishable goods.
Yeah.
So then the perishable goods would rot in the train cars.
It would all rot. Yep.
And so, again, if you want to improve conditions, you hurt the owners in their wallet. They don't care about humanity, but they do care about money.
Correct.
And so that's the only way to possibly improve your condition is to hurt their money. Anyway, so they would throw these switches and all this other stuff. They also removed or loosened something on the tracks that was called the sabot de voie. Now, the sabot de voie was like a little brake shoe on the side of the tracks that would help slow down the train as it approached like a descent, right? Because, going downhill without slowing down properly is really dangerous. And this is 1910. So still, so you'd have these things that would sort of automatically provide some braking. So these railway workers on strike would go and either loosen them or remove them so that the trains would then derail when they started going down the hill because they couldn't slow down enough. Because these sabot de voie were removed or loose or whatever. And so causes derailments and everything else. And that's where the term sabotage comes into English, where the English are complaining about these trains being sabotaged by French workers and basically saying like they should just be happy to have any old job. They shouldn't be complaining about how much they get paid. So there you go. Just like the anti-hero Woody, how he learned that solidarity with Buzz and the rest of the proletarian toys was the only way to secure their rights in the suspenseful body horror film Toy Story. So too did French railway workers learn to throw their metaphorical wooden shoes into the machinery of capital, relying on solidarity to secure their own improved working conditions and forestall being ground up by the gears of capital.
I love it.
There's my opening story.
I think it's phenomenal.
I hope you like it.
I think it's fantastic. I'll never watch Toy Story the same again.
There's a lot of body horror stuff there. It's worth, you gotta, evaluate culture, man. People create culture for a reason. They create art for a reason. Got to contemplate it. I would argue that Toy Story is art.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'll tell you, I love the movie and I watch it to this day. Like I didn't just watch it because I originally watched it because my daughter was a little kid and she watched those movies. And then after that, there's times where I've watched it alone. So if it's on, I'll put it on sometimes.
And Mike, that is where we will stop our story for the night.
That's a great decision.
Leave now while you still can.